When you're starting or growing a business, one of the things that you will first encounter, one of the legal questions that you'll get is what type of entity should you start with? And typically the answer to that question is going to be an LLC or a C corporation. There is a possibility to elect S corporation taxation as well. And so I say all of this to say that it can become quite confusing when you first start out. The structure you choose ultimately impacts the tax liability that you're going to face. And so it's really important that you get this right on the front end. And you should really even be revisiting this concept throughout the life of your business. Let's talk about the LLC. The LLC is the best structure for almost every type of client that I speak with. It is simple to maintain, it's easy to form, and it's quick to get started. It protects you from any sort of judgment creditors. It protects your personal assets. So it offers that limited liability protection. So the LLC is the entity that I recommend for almost all of my clients. It's the most simple to start up and it's the most simple to maintain. It offers what we're looking for, which is limiting your personal liability from any liability that the business might encounter. Now, there's a lot of caveats on that front, and we can talk about that later, but certainly at a minimum, you want to form an LLC. The LLC is great for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses, pretty much every single business. And why is that? Well, first of all, it's the most simple to operate. Tax information, all of your business expenses flows down onto your personal tax return, and you do not have a separate business tax return. It doesn't require a bunch of overhead and maintenance that you would have when you get into a C corporation. So from a general perspective, choosing an LLC is almost always going to be the right fit. Our next type of entity that we sometimes recommend, but not very often, is a C corporation. A C corporation also limits the personal liability of its shareholders, but the big issue is that you pay taxation both at the corporate level and also the shareholders pay taxation on their own dividends. And so it's not a structure that we use unless we are usually looking at becoming some sort of publicly traded company, or we're going to take some sort of venture capital. And even if we're taking venture capital, we're talking about taking venture capital from more than 100 investors. Think of those unicorns. Maybe they're doing crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is another area where having a C corporation might be necessary. Also, it presents a number of problems with real estate owning and other issues. So once you've determined whether or not you're going to form an LLC or form a C Corp, the next thought is whether or not you should make an S corporation election. This is not a separate entity. This is actually an election, a tax election that applies to the entity level. If you're an LLC, as we talked about before, all of your business expenses and profits flow through to your own personal tax return. If you end up making an S-Corp election, there's a huge advantage because the first is that instead of paying 15% self-employment tax, you save all of that. Instead, you give yourself a reasonable salary for the business. So you determine what's reasonable for people in your shoes to be paid. You actually pay yourself like you would an employee. You put yourself on payroll. Those W-2 taxes go straight to the federal government, and you're able to avoid that 15% self-employment tax. And so this typically works out when we get to an LLC that has net revenue over $80,000 or $100,000. Whenever we're in that range, we really want to consider whether making that S-Corp election is a good idea. So to sum it up, basically an LLC is almost always the type of entity that I will recommend for clients. It's easy to set up, it's easy to maintain. If you're watching this video, you really probably do not need to form a C corporation. They are not attractive from a tax perspective, and they really are for those types of businesses that ultimately are going to end up going public, which in my 15-year career, I have not had any startups that have gone from that to a public corporation. It's highly unusual. So moral of the story there, most likely you want an LLC. The question is, do you make that S-Corp election, and when do you make it? Do you make it at the front end because you have a pretty good understanding that you're going to earn more than $100,000 in net revenue that year? Otherwise, the government gives you 18 months to make that decision. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. Really, everything has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And you need to continue to look at that every year. We don't just analyze whether you're in the right entity year one and when you first start to form. We really need to look at your entity and look at your S-Corp election, or whether or not you should make an S-Corp election every year that you are growing until you end up making that election. And then even there are certain times in which maybe you want to revoke an S-Corp election. You've come back under that 80,000 net revenue. At Business Law Group, we work with entrepreneurs and growing businesses every day. Check out our website, www.lawgroup.biz, and book an online consultation. We offer flat fee consultations, and you'll come away from the consultation with everything you need to know to make an informed decision.